It is a huge honor for me to be sitting on the same couch with Flo.
Hi.
Who's formerly Flora Couper. Flo is a rock star, and thank you so much for driving an hour and a half to be with me.
My pleasure.
The only reason she showed up is because I told her I was William Wallace, and she was just, she thought, wow, I got to meet William Wallace.
I was so intrigued to meet him.
And then she shows up, and it's just me. So Flo is both an enthusiastic and energetic coach and clinician, dental hygienist, team development trainer, and NLP coach. She is always improving and perfecting all that she does to get better outcomes. Having been a very successful team member and highly effective clinician, her motivation now is very simple: to help and inspire clinicians and their teams to do great work. She has been running her own business consultancy company, Connect Coaching, for 2 years now. This program helps private dentists and medical aesthetic clinicians. She's been a qualified dental nurse since 1991, diploma in dental hygiene since 1997, NLP practitioner coach since 2015, and her website is connectcoaching.co.uk.
That's right.
Connectcoaching.co.uk, and her email is flo@connectcoaching.co.uk. So thank you so much for being on my show.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So tell my homies what you do.
So I help private dental clinics and medical aesthetic clinics grow their business through looking after their patient and their teams. So I basically encourage it's about people. It's not about heavy processes, it's not about heavy sales, it's about people. So it's developing the people to look after the patients, and the money follows. It's using a process.
That's your name, Flo.
Absolutely. I know.
The money flows from Flo. So when you started this back in the day, were most dentists in the UK NHS dentists, and are you working mostly with NHS dentists or dentists that are trying to go more private?
So back in the day, NHS was where I started. I started as a dental nurse for an NHS practice. That's what I learned, and then once I qualified as a dental hygienist, I worked through NHS, I worked in community, I worked in the dental hospital, and then fortunately I was really lucky to get a position in a private dental clinic, and since then I never looked back. It then became about the quality of the service to the patient, as well as getting the treatment outcomes. So yeah, pretty much within the private sector. My clients are provide private dentistry.
And does that only work in the richest parts of London in the artistic finance?
Absolutely not. No, I mean, people. There's a misconception that everything's more expensive in London and people have got more money in London. People who want good care will pay for that good care wherever they are. There are regional differences, of course, but in actual fact, some of the clinics I work with up north are not any cheaper, any less expensive than they are in London. And sometimes in London they can lower the cost because there's more competition. So I would say across the UK there's an even spread of private dentists.
And what percent of the UK of the people say, I just want it, whatever the government pays for free, versus I value dentistry and I'll pay more if I could go to Flo?
It's a really good. So ask me that again, Howard. So
what percent of the UK people? There's 60 million people in the UK. What percent of those 60 million say, I'm just going to go to whoever does what the government pays, NHS, I'm not paying any out of pocket?
Yeah, that's a good
versus
question.
What percent would say, I would open my wallet and pay more?
That's a good question. I probably don't know percent on the patients, but I would say the bigger proportion of people will go to NHS. However, there are some excellent NHS dentists out there. However, there is a very quick fix mentality, a quick fix type of style of dentistry that's done in the NHS, and quite a lot of the times the private practices are the ones that mop up all the years of neglect, for a better word. So often a lot of people who are driven to the NHS, actually a lot of them realise that they don't then get the care, so they are driven to private practices. I mean, I've lost count of the amount of people who I've treated on a private basis who have came in and nobody's ever told them they've had gum disease. And they've got grade 2 and 3 mobility, they've got bleeding, they've got, calculus all over, subgingivally, and nobody's told them that they've got gum disease, and that's a sin. So I think there's a huge there's a huge drive in a lot of people seeking better care, because of course we've got the internet. You know, you've got people are becoming more educated themselves. They often don't have to visit the dental practice to become educated. And I think a lot of patients, certainly the ones I've experienced, they have reached the conclusion that they just know that things are not right. You know, they've maybe visited a dentist repeatedly for the same problem just to be patched up, told it's okay, and they themselves have just known something's not right. And again, to sympathise on the NHS dentist point of view, sometimes they're just overworked with volumes of patients that they don't have the energy almost, or the processes to give that, you know, comprehensive care that a lot of the patients need.
And how many of the hygienists and dentists working in the NHS in a high volume practice are doing dentistry on people that they would not have done unto them?
There probably is a high proportion doing that. There are also some in the UK. There are some NHS dentists who are driven on the evidence base. You know, and of course, evidence-based dentistry is great, but there's a bigger picture. You know, there's a person there behind the teeth. There's a bigger picture of really what's going on with that person. And I think sometimes dentists can impose their own. Some NHS dentists can impose their own values onto the patient. So sometimes you have patients asking for. They're asking for whitening, they're asking for more things. And I've had countless patients who have come to me and say, you know, I asked my dentist about whitening, but he said that I shouldn't have it done. You know, and you're sort of thinking, well, there are pros and cons of having it done, there are sometimes contraindications for it, but to just say no. So sometimes I think a lot of NHS dentists impose their values on the patient rather than it being that they're doing to patients what they wouldn't have done themselves. I think that's probably the key.
I was gonna bleach my teeth, but I just started wearing really dark colors.
Absolutely, get
and
suntan.
my teeth look whiter.
Yeah, and wear a nice plum lipstick. I don't know if that would suit you. A plum lipstick works wonders.
You're thinking of my brother, not me. And so what do you actually? You go into the office and describe your consulting program.
So my consultancy program is quite unique in the sense I work through a process called service design. So I'm a service designer. I go into businesses and I help those businesses improve their service, improve their patient relations, improve their patient experiences, and support the team who are providing that care to the patient. So we help businesses grow through basically as a patient-centric relationships, patient-centric processes, and we look at there's 5 touch points that a patient will visit a practice. So for example, there is the awareness phase. So before a patient's even picked up the phone to you, I help businesses identify what's their marketing saying about them, what is their brand, what's their mission, what do they want patients to know about them before they even make contact with them. And a lot of I'm part of this phenomenal group, the Content Marketing Academy. It's a Scotland-based company run by a guy called Chris Marr, and he helps us to identify buying behaviours. And there's a real good statistic that actually came out of Harvard Business School, which was 70% of the buying decision is made before a customer purchases. Now I sort of questioned that because I'm thinking I don't really believe that 70% of patients who call a dental practice are qualified. You know, I think they've got so many questions. So I sort of raised that, and one of the things that we've identified through one of my friends, Marcus Sheridan from the Sales Line, he's an American sales coach as well. One of the things that we identified is there's probably not an awful lot of education that dentists do through blogging, through video, through podcasting. There's not an awful lot of education that they do to answer questions. A lot of marketing is about telling about the services and telling how they can help people, but there's very little on answering the questions that people have. So I actually help practices go in and think, you know, what is it about you that people should want? And we help them create like a content marketing plan. So how to do blogging, how to do podcasting, how to do video, how to have a presence online, so that when these patients are calling up, 2 things can happen actually. When the patients phone up, they've possibly been but they've probably came across your information if they've Googled questions. And also, if a patient does phone up and they maybe have lots of questions, you can actually use these blogs as an educational tool. So I believe in really educating them before they've even walked into the practice, whereas typically and commonly the education starts at the new patient exam. So it's all about looking through these 5 processes. So the awareness is one of them. The second one is the joining phase. So it's a bit like, private dentists, of course, they invest in how is my phone call getting answered. But I question them on, are you really speaking to a person or are you speaking to a set of teeth? Because sometimes that's what the conversation is. A patient will phone up about something, and it's all about just having a human touch, building trust. So my whole process is to help. I help them to live in their patient's shoes so that they're able to build trust right along the way, so that by the time they get to the end of the presentation, it's done, and it's not a hard sale then, and objections have come up across, could come up all along the way. The third phase that we look at is the new patient experience. So again, I've got the skills and the knowledge to go in and tell any practice what to do, but I don't. My job is to empower the team to do it, and that's where you really try and drive and change behaviour. So I don't have a cookie cutter approach. I have many systems and processes that I teach. However, there's a flexibility within them.
Great. Go. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So So what I teach is there's always a flexibility, and that comes from being an NLP coach. So one of NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, again from the States, is there's 14 presuppositions, and if you operate from those 14 presuppositions, you'll be absolutely more successful. And one of them is the person who has the greatest flexibility has the biggest influence on the system. And I encourage practices to get their process in, but really feedback from the patients, feedback from the team, what's working, what's not working so well, so that they can actually be flexible and serve the patients and give them the best experience. And that's really in a nutshell everything that's the first 3 phases actually. And then of course there's the crucial part, which is the loyalty phase. And the loyalty phase is something that I'm really excited about bringing, because in every dental practice will spend money on marketing. Okay, they all do it. In an NHS, they might not have to do it because they're dealing with volumes. When you're in a private dental practice, you have to market. You've got competitors all around you. But so you have a marketing budget. But what about a loyalty budget? Do dental practices actually have a loyalty budget? So I would always ask them to consider, what about when a patient leaves? Or the patient might say, oh, it's gone too expensive. I would question that. I don't believe a patient leaves because it's too expensive. I believe a patient has left and says it's too expensive because they have found less value. So they've probably felt good value in at some point, maybe in the new phase, in the early stage. But what about when they become existing and loyal? So it's about having a loyalty budget. And I would ask every practice to look at that, address that, have a loyalty budget. It could be £50 a month, it could be £100 a month, it could be £500 a month, or dollars if you're in the US, and have that budget and use it, And then of course then there's the leaving phase.
Our office only uses counterfeit dollars.
Okay. Yeah, I've never
We have a really good copier machine.
I've never worked with a practice that does that, but I'd be interested in finding who makes them.
But I think that's amazing. A loyalty, because they all have a marketing budget. How much do you think, as a percent though, not dollars or pounds, but percent, how much do you think they should spend on marketing, and how much should they spend on loyalty?
They should, eventually, if you're able to drive content marketing, which is evergreen content, which is recyclable marketing, which you don't have to, once you've done the blog and it's getting you SEO rankings and getting your website up, you don't have to pay for that again. So really your marketing budget should go down and your loyalty budget should go up. So in answer to your question, Howard, I would suppose it would depend on how much marketing you were having to do at the beginning, but eventually if you were to embrace the content marketing and have evergreen content that was recyclable, so that you weren't having to pay big bucks on marketing companies that would come in, they'll supply, they'll give you so many leads, they'll do all this and it's great, and then you've got to pay them again for the next batch and pay them for the next batch. This is recyclable, evergreen content. And once you've done that, you can then get much smarter and pay less on marketing, because marketing's still needed and marketing still brings lots of good value. And then I would say the balance between the loyalty and the marketing should go up. So the percent, I would say, should be about even. You know, it's things like you can do is random acts of kindness. Somebody that's came in, you know, that patient who you've always kept waiting. There's that one who you just think, oh God, I've run late again, and it's them. Do you know what? We're not happy that this has happened to you again. Your appointment's free. Whatever, maybe not a crown or a veneer, but you know, your hygiene appointment, it's free. So there's lots of things like that. You know, knowing just special things about them, knowing what they like. I know that you like going to the cinema. There's some cinema vouchers. You know, the list's endless, and it's not for me to say what people should do. It's for dentists to know their patients and know what their patients would want.
So then, and then the number 5 is?
Yeah, number 5 is the leaving phase, okay? So I'll give you an example. I was very fortunate to spend 12 years working in Cherrybank Dental Spa, which everybody in the UK knows Elaine Halley. And she had always she won awards for customer service way back before dentists were even thinking about customer service, you know. And one of the things that I did when I left as a dental hygienist, it kind of pained me a little bit that I was leaving a practice that I'd had almost 12 year relationships with some of these patients, you know. I'd taken them from disease to healthy. We've seen their whole journey of them coming in with not very nice smile to nice smile and keeping them healthy. And I thought it didn't sit with me that I had to just leave and just go, oh, they get a letter, oh, Flo's not here anymore. So I thought that's just not right. So what I did was I drafted a letter, and the letter was along the lines of, you know, hi, I've known you for a long time. We've, you know, we've gotten to know each other very well, as much as helping you with your health. We've gotten to know each other, and I just want to let you know it came with a hard heart and a heavy, you know, decision that I've came to, you know, that I am leaving, and I told them what I was doing, and I just thanked them for being a great patient. And you know, almost every one of them emailed back and they wished me luck. And I know that even these patients now, when they come in, they're the ones that will say, oh, how's Flo getting on? You know, so I've not just dumped them. So that's one aspect of leaving. But what about when the patient leaves? Is it okay and you just accept it? What do you do to make them feel welcome? Because you need to welcome that, yeah, I'm sorry to hear you leaving. You want to find out why they're leaving, but actually you want to have an open door for them. Look, the reason that they are leaving, you want to make sure that they're welcome back at any time, because the chances are you're giving, you know, if you're giving great service, the chances are they'll go elsewhere and they'll not get that. And certainly if they're shopping on cost, you know, they might go, the prices are going up and up, I'm going to try somewhere else. But they know that they won't get, you know, you should be comfortable that they won't get a like for like service. So it's how you welcome them back, because you don't want patients to feel uncomfortable in coming back. So that's the leaving phase. So I help businesses with those 5 phases, and that's what we call service design. And it's such a beautiful process because it puts the patients and your frontline staff at the heart of every process and every decision that you make in your business. So therefore you're not making decisions that you then have to get everybody on board with. You're making decisions that everybody is helping you co-create. And that's really where it drives change. I love doing it.
When I left my last job, they replaced me with a rubber plant.
Oh, did they? Yeah. Oh no.
You know you're bad when you're replaced.
When you're replaced with a rubber
so,
plant.
Flo, you know, a lot of great HR people say, you hire on attitude, train for skill. Yeah. A lot of times, you know, I think the most stressful thing on life is dealing with people, whether it be your mom and your 5 sisters, or your staff, or your people are complex. Yeah. And a lot of dentists are sitting there looking at HR and they're thinking, you know, why does Amy have a bad attitude? Is it something I'm doing? Is it something Amy's bringing? So when you're in there consulting and you're trying to get this great customer service, what are some tips on with staff? How do you know whether you sit there and say, Doc, come here, Amy's got to go. She is not customer service. Okay. Talk about HR.
Okay, so sometimes people just don't cut it. Okay, there is.
You're talking about the Irish.
Oh no, never.
Are you talking about my whole family tree?
I've never insulted the Irish. Sometimes there are times where people just don't cut it. Sometimes they don't have the skills, and sometimes they don't have the attitude. But skills can be taught. Attitudes can be changed, but they're difficult to change. So from an HR point of view, obviously there are laws in HR that I can't go into, but the whole key thing is on, I engage, when I work, I engage the team on, tell me your problems. I want to know the problems. I want to know their problems. And if I know their problems and I'm giving them a way of solving it, it's all about ownership. You know, it's all about ownership. And I think when you're in a busy practice, and this might all sound all grand and great, but when you're in this busy practice and you've got that bad apple, and that bad apple can bring down everybody else, you almost have to just try and ring fence the bad apple. And what I do with my coaching is I operate from a position of some of the NLP presuppositions, and I don't have to say who is the bad apple. Through my coaching, usually the bad apple's kind of sitting there thinking, actually, I maybe need to ripen up a little bit, you know. And if the bad apple doesn't ripen up, then I think it's an HR thing, and you just have to have that honest conversation of, you know, is this for you or not? And sometimes when businesses are going, usually when I work with a business, they're going through change, they're wanting something, they're wanting to drive the business up. And it's a case of, you know, are you on board or are you not on board? I will be honest, I'm there to get that team working for the dentist, but do you know what, if there is a little saying, but I better not say, if some people are unpolishable, don't spend time and effort polishing them.
Well,
you know.
What part of that were you not allowed to say? You can't polish a turd?
I'm glad you said it.
Okay, so back to your consulting. You know, the Italians always said, you know, a fish rots from the head down. Okay. So when you go into an office and the dentist doesn't have an energetic, you know, if the dentist isn't fired up and passionate, how is the team going to be fired up and passionate?
So if the dentist isn't fired up and passionate, that's where I start. You know, it's all about the leadership. There's no point in trying to get an energetic team going when the dentist is just not there.
So do you usually hit them over the head with a shovel and bury them behind the office and hire a young, hot associate?
Do you know what? I haven't done that yet. But you know,
you're
you
considering
never know.
it.
Well, you know what? I'm always learning, so I'll take that one on board.
So burnout is tough in dentistry.
Absolutely.
Do you see that much, and how do you go in and energize a burned out dentist who wants to?
I believe a burned out dentist are the ones who are carrying too much weight on their shoulders of everything. So the success of a dentist is if a dentist is able to know his why. Know why he does something. Why is he a dentist? What is his higher purpose other than drilling and what else? You know, why does he do what he does, or why does she do what she does? Know that, know their values, know the direction and the vision that they want them to go into. And then it's a case of, when they've got that identified, it's a case of, right, what do I need all around me so that I can just focus on this bit? Because of course you get some dentists who, you know, love getting into marketing, they love getting into everything else. So it's about finding your real passion and not allowing yourself anything that could be delegated legally and ethically, delegate it. And that's the key thing of just getting an empowered team. If you have an empowered team that you're happy to make the decisions for you, and that you empower them to make the decisions, you know, rather than having to be, oh, I better go and ask, I better go and ask, I better go and ask. That's just a recipe for disaster. So quite often in the loyalty phase, for example, I spoke about having a loyalty budget. Don't have a loyalty budget and then have, every time that you want to use it, have to ask the dentist. That's just draining his energy and time. You know, it needs to be front desk person, junior nurse. Actually, there's a situation here. I'm going to use a part of the loyalty budget for this patient. So I think dentists, they have to let control go on some things, but then they obviously have to make sure that they're letting it go and they can relax with it gone, you know, that it's taken care of. So I think the key thing for a dentist is not to take too much on, which is easier said than done, but it's all about driving the team to do everything that can be legally and ethically delegated.
When these dentists go to these conventions, the BDA, these conventions, a lot of times they're led to believe that, you know what really impresses new patients? lasers, CAD CAM, 3-dimensional X-rays, and they're looking at these high price budgets.
Yeah.
Do you think that really is the deal breaker in impressing the patient when they come in and see all that high technology?
No.
Talk about that.
So,
Because you know how dentists love shiny objects.
yeah, dentists love shiny objects, and there is an element if you can weave shouting about your shiny objects into a human conversation and into caring about that patient, that the shiny objects can have some clout. However, it's about being human. People deal with people. People don't deal with shiny objects. It's about being human. It's about being interested in that patient. It's about knowing that patient. It's about serving that patient. And all of your technology assists you in doing it, but the technology is not at the forefront of the patient relationship. Definitely not.
Yeah, I mean, if I went back to America and I listed the 1,000 richest dentists I know from a practice, they don't have a laser, they don't have a CAD CAM, they just have a rocking hot staff.
Yeah.
When you walk in the office, you can feel the energy, the
Yeah.
enthusiasm, and the doctor only does fillings and crowns.
Yeah.
They don't even place implants, do sleep apnea, Invisalign. They don't do any of the specialty work.
Yeah.
They just have a robust recall and do a lot of fillings and crowns all day long.
Exactly, and they're basically caring very well for their patients, and they're making their patients at the heart of what they do, you know. And they, of course, technology assists us in doing our jobs. Of course, it does, and you know, some of the investments are really good and they're really worthwhile. But I think sometimes when you look at a lot of technology, sometimes it's the dentist would impress other dentists, rather than
Right.
impressing the patient.
Well, isn't that the truth? They say even that when girls do all their makeup and wear their high heels and all that to go on a date with their husband, that they're not wearing high heels for their husband.
Yes.
They're wearing high heels and all that stuff to they're in competition with all the other girls in the restaurant.
Exactly. Yeah.
You believe that?
I believe that.
Yeah, I would also ask you about this leadership deal. In my, I've been doing this 30 years.
Yeah.
When I was a freshman in dental school, the senior class had one woman, and now the senior class are 45% women.
Yeah.
Is that about the same thing that happened in the UK in the last 30
Huge,
years?
Yeah, there's a huge surge of female dentists. And
Huge surge?
A huge surge. When I was, 27 years ago when I started, most of the dentists that I worked with were male. And I remember when I started, I went to Dundee Dental Hospital. I remember looking through all the past graduates' pictures and things, and most of them were men. And then when you looked at the clinics, you know, in the past 5 to 10 years, a huge surge in females. Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So who do you think's doing just to be a generalization? Who do you think's better in customer service? Women-led dental offices or male dental offices?
I don't think sex
You don't
dictates
see?
it at all. No, I think I think it's all about being very clear on your vision, whether you're male or female.
Being very clear on what?
Clear on your vision.
On your vision.
for the how you want what your how you want your practice to be, where you want to go. I think you have to be very clear in the direction that you're going, very clear on what you expect of your team, and I don't really think that there's sex. I don't think that influences anything at all. I work with great male and female dentists, and I've never really, through personal experience, I've never differentiated the two.
Okay, so you said technology wasn't a big player. Some of the dentists think, again, to the shiny object deals.
Yeah.
Well, if I got a laser, or if I got a CAD CAM, or if I got 3D X-rays, I'd be successful. A lot of them think the same thing where I'll be successful if I learn how to place implants, or I learn Invisalign, or I learn sleep apnea, or from the patient experience point of view, is that the deal breaker thing, or is it not really?
No, I think it's all about, from patient experience, it's about knowing what your patients want. So if you have a lot of patients coming in through, so if you're a cosmetic dentist, for example, or a regular dentist, and you have a lot of patients coming in and they're wanting implants, for example, or there's a need for implants, and you're referring all that out, there might come a point where your patients actually go, oh, do you not do them? I'd rather come here. And then it's a case of listening to what your patients want and thinking, actually, could that work for us? There certainly is a need for it. Could that work? Could we either train? Could we get an implantologist in? And I think it would be, it's about knowing that if you have an implant clinic next door, for example, why bother? You know, it's just there. Why take on all that extra learning if it's something that you're not passionate about? So I think the patient experience should never dictate what course you're steered into, because you can have a lot of patients. So in dentistry, aesthetics, medical aesthetics like Botox and things like that, that's a big part of dentistry in the UK. Is it the same in the US, or is it the same in the US?
In Botox?
Yeah, do dentists do a lot of Botox?
I would guess we put a course on it on Dental Town by David Kimmel, right? And I would say 1%. No, but you do this a lot, right?
Yeah. So it's a big part. It's definitely a huge growth point in a lot of private dentists.
Now, Botox or derma fillers, or both? And you're doing both of those?
Yeah.
And you clinically do that still?
Yes, I'm slowing down from that. I'm reducing. I'm getting so busy that I'm kind of reducing with that. So I probably do about 1.5 days at the moment, and I'm looking to reduce.
What I did instead of Botox or derma fill, whenever a beautiful lady walks in the room, I just turn the light down.
That's great.
Yeah. And if I can't turn the light down, if I'm like outside, I just put a sack over her head and then my head. Just in case my sack falls off, she's still safe.
She's still safe.
So,
or if you're in the mirror, just take a step back. Lots of tips.
So Botox and Dermafill is growing in the UK?
Yeah, it's huge.
And is it mostly, I assume, for women, not boys?
No, there's a lot of men.
But what percent?
I would say less than. My estimate would be between 5 and 6% males.
Which is how many?
Majority females, yeah.
And 5 to 6% is what we'd expect to be the gay population of males in the United Kingdom.
Not always, actually. Not always. There's a lot of very heterosexual males that they just want to, be rejuvenated.
They just want to get Dermafill and eventually come out of the closet, get divorced, and marry.
Maybe. Goodness knows.
This is Dentistry Uncensored, right? Yeah. So it's 5% males.
Yes.
And 95% women.
Yeah.
And is there an age range? Is it how old is this woman? Is she?
So females,
30, 40, 50?
I would say 30 is probably on average a generally okay age to start, because that's 30 is the age where the collagen and elastin in your skin is beginning to deplete. So 30,
see, I would disagree. I would say they start doing it when they got to start beefing themselves up for the big divorce. They're getting ready to fire their husband, so they're getting Botox and all these fancy procedures.
They're probably going higher than Botox at the divorce stage. Botox is probably before they get married, and everything surgical is for the divorce stage, I would say. But yeah, it's huge. But in the state of Nevada, it's became legal for dental hygienists to carry out Botox injections.
Is that only in Nevada?
But I don't know if it's only in Nevada, but that interested me because there's a whole kind of change in the way aesthetics is being practiced at the minute. They're putting in a lot of legislation, they're putting in a lot of training, which is rightly so. It should be in place. It's fairly unregulated at the minute, but there's a lot of things going through Parliament and going through government, particularly the Scottish Parliament, are leading the way around the UK.
Well, you should take a legal tip from the American casino industry. You know what they do? What? Where casinos are illegal, they put the entire casino on a riverboat and put it either in the river or offshore in the ocean. Okay. So the laws don't apply.
So great.
I am kidding you not. You could probably park a boat in the Thames and have all the...
have everything going on.
Well, if you look at a lot of the loopholes and all these deals, it doesn't cover waterways and oceans and...
So maybe the North Sea oil, because it's all a bit debatable, maybe we can start doing Botox injections on the platform then.
Yeah.
I don't know where it would stand, but...
So talk about Botox and talk about dermafills. What is this woman looking for? Is it her... And I don't even know the technical form.
Okay, so usually Botox basically treats dynamic lines, so lines that are there just in motion, okay, in expression. And by getting the Botox done quite you can't really say, you can't advertise Botox because it's a brand, but botulinum toxin, by getting those injections quite regularly, you then reduce the muscle activity, so you then prevent static lines from settling in. So it's an amazing age preventer, and it's a massive growth. You know, when you have a lot of dentists who are doing a lot of cosmetic dentistry, it fits in, you know, so well. So for example, people that have a gummy smile, you can inject some Botox into the lip area to stop the elevation of the lip when they smile and reduce a gummy smile, you know. So it often complements a lot of the cosmetic work that's getting done. The same as with dermal fillers. So people might have the lips plump, they might have lines and wrinkles, folds and things corrected. And certainly in patients who have, you know, sort of tendencies for angular colitis, you can use dermal fillers in there. So there's lots of medical reasons, and it doesn't always just fit a stereotypical person. And in actual fact, there's so many people have it done that you wouldn't imagine have it done. You know, it's a big cross spectrum, but it's a huge growth point for a lot of dental practices. But a lot of dental practices struggle with it. They struggle building a high loyal patient base with it, and I think the reason for that is because in dentistry, patients are coming for dentistry, so it's something not alien to them, but it's not a run-of-the-mill thing where when they're coming for Botox and filler, although they're coming for a medical treatment, and it is a medical treatment, in their mindset they're coming for a beauty treatment. And there's almost a slight different way that you should relate to them. I always think, you know, it's just a bit more, there's a different relationship you have with an aesthetic patient than you do with a dental patient. That's been my experience. I encourage them to be, you know, you need to just be a little bit more on level with them. You know, you need to just be in their world, you know, and don't make judgments if they want this or that. You know, you're the clinician, you decide what's okay and what's not okay, because at the end of the day, patients who want bigger and bigger and bigger lips, you just like that, no, because it's got your name tag hanging from them basically, you know. So you need to make sure that, you know, you're doing it ethically, you're doing it safe, you're doing it in the best interest of the patient. But there's a huge growth there for dentists and hygienists actually in doing aesthetics in a dental practice. It's huge. Yeah.
That is amazing. I mean, it's really amazing.
Yeah.
So who is your perfect client? So you're talking to thousands of dentists out there from all over the world. Do you mostly just work in UK? Do you travel to? In the UK, I'm not opposed to traveling. I'm kind of just in the UK. That's my. And what is your typical plan? I mean, are you there for a day, 2 days, a week?
Usually, I would work with clients. Usually when I work with clients, I don't really leave them because I always have them on some sort of retainer. You know, whatever it is. You know, just to give them phone support, help support. But typically, I would go in, and what we do is we do a patient mapping process, and that involves me just basically going in. I go into their business and I am like the biggest sponge that you have ever seen. I absorb every single thing that goes on. I absorb their communications, I look at their interactions with their patients, I look at how the dentist interacts with the team, I get in, I look on their programs, I look at the charts, I look at everything. Okay, I'm like the nosiest person in the world on that day. And as well as that, I actually gather a selection of patients and I contact these patients. And it takes me quite a long time to do it, but the information that you receive is so valuable. So, and essentially, if they are, the patients will, because I come in as a third party, and I just, you know, would say, you know, I'm working with such and such dental practice, and, you know, they're really looking at improving things. They're such a forward-focused practice, forward-moving practice, and they're always looking at ways to improve. And what I would like to do is just get some information from you as to what your experience has been, and just get into real rapport with them on the phone, get them relaxed. It's not a questionnaire, it's a conversation. So I have a conversation with maybe 10 to 20 different people. So it does take me quite a long time. So I map all my observations that I see in the clinic or the practice, and then I map all my observations through the patient phone calls, and I'm looking for themes. I look for themes of problems. Individuals' opinions, you know, if 1 out of 20 says one thing, I would take it on board, but there might be a reason for that one thing, and it might not be a big huge thing that you have to go and change the whole process around it. So that's what I do. I give them a map, and then so basically there's so many things that I cover. And a lot of dentists, when they work with me, they go, so what would you cover? What would you cover? And it's a bit like that, well, I don't know until I get in, you know. It's about, if you want to improve your business and you want a sustainable growth and you don't want a cookie cutter approach, and you're all about promoting your team, involving your team and involving your patients, and if you want to create the best patient experiences, then I'm probably the coach for you. If you want hard processes and hard management, I'm probably not the coach for you, you know. But it's all about leadership, it's about involving these patients. So once we do that, then I then put together a bit of a plan. I discuss it with the dentist, and if the dentist has a real pressing need, I start there, you know. So if, for example, if sales came last and they had a dire, you know, problem with how they were communicating to get more, we would just start there. We would polish it up as we went on, but I basically operate from the position of having complete flexibility, so that I'm helping them meet what they need now, and not just taking them through my process. So that's how it typically works to begin with. Yeah.
You're a NLP coach.
Yes. Neuro-Linguistic
Programming. I assure you, a lot of the homies out there don't know what that means. What is neuro-linguistic programming?
So neuro-linguistic programming is, neuro is looking at the brain, linguistics is obviously the language. So it's looking at how our language affects behaviours. And it's also looking at how we communicate. It's a communication tool. It's the most excellent way of being able to listen to people and get into rapport with people and really get into tune with that person. So it can be used in so many different capacities. So it can be used, it's the biggest thing to drive change. So to change behaviour, it is the thing to change behaviour in an individual. So in a one-to-one coaching session, an NLP coach facilitates the client's mind to make the change. So we're all made up of, we've created maps of we all have our own individual maps of where we believe our abilities are, our beliefs. We all have our own maps that basically will control us really in our unconscious mind. And some of these maps are really good and they help drive good behaviour, but some of them have just not been put together properly through our experiences. So through your experiences, Christmas time is the best example. So Christmas time, I don't know what it's like in the States, but in the UK we always have a clementine orange. Is that orange?
A what on?
A clementine orange or a mandarin orange? Is that, no?
No, we have oranges.
Yeah, you have oranges, but do you put them in a Christmas stocking at Christmas?
I think some people might, but we don't.
Well,
Okay.
Your grandfather, when they were little, what he loved the most about Christmas, that was the only time of the year they got an orange.
Yeah, yeah.
And they would get an orange in their stocking, and Grandpa Bernard, the minute he woke up on Christmas morning, he'd run for that stocking, and he said that was their candy bar.
Absolutely.
I mean, they didn't have candy bars, and he thought that was the tastiest damn thing, and he got one a year at Christmas.
And I bet every year after that, an orange would take him to Christmas. You know, having that orange. So that's what I mean by a map. So we would have an orange in our stocking as well, an orange and an apple. So that's a very basic example of how a map works. So it's a bit like you have that orange, it reminds you of that lovely time on Christmas Day when you get up and Santa's been and you run and you get your stocking and you get all your toys and everything, but the smell of that orange can trigger the memory of Christmas. Now we can have lots of different things like that, and sometimes there could be lots of negative ones as well, and things that have, you know, just occurred. It could be anything from something that's happened at school that's just gone in your unconscious and it's created a map, and actually can sometimes be debilitating for people to get change, you know. So sometimes past experiences can prevent forward change. And so that's what NLP does on a one-to-one basis. But where it's very good in teams is by looking at all the presuppositions of where you operate from. It's amazing in team development because it doesn't allow, there is no, NLP is very clean as well. Do you know what I mean by that? So it's a very clean coaching tool. You absolutely never imprint your views. You would never say in a coaching session, come on, you can do it, because that's your view. It's about facilitating that change, but it's that change that drives better behaviour. So in NLP, there's when you really operate from NLP, I'm working with a practice next week actually, and that's what we're about to do, is an NLP development day. Luckily for me, the dentist is NLP trained, so he really buys it and gets it. Some people think it's a bit voodoo and a bit, there's something in, maybe not quite pure in it, but it's one of the most purest, beautiful processes ever, and it really helps to drive change. And it just, if you operate from these sort of 14 presuppositions, it actually helps you to just cut through all the nonsense that goes on in teams, and it just helps people to be accountable, to be in control of their own behaviour. It's an amazing process.
How do my homies learn more about NLP?
So NLP, it's developed in the States. It was developed by John Grinder and Richard Bandler. They developed it through modelling. They modelled successful people, and now you would really have to go and find a coach. But there's lots of coaches all over the world. My coach is amazing. She's just about to write a book. She is Aileen MacDonald-Hart of EMH Inspire. She's based in Edinburgh, but she has some clients around the world, and she runs evidence-based courses. So NLP in the UK is not regulated. It's a form of psychotherapy that's not regulated. So my advice would be to find someone that's really good, a coach who teaches it, that has the psychotherapy background, and not someone that's just went on a course. So I know I am a really good NLP practitioner coach, but I would never go and teach people, because I'm not qualified to teach people to become coaches, and a lot of people they do unethically. So find a really good coach. America's huge, and I'm sorry for the size of America, because I actually don't know very many NLP coaches there. But in the UK, Aileen MacDonald-Hart she's based in Edinburgh. She's amazing. Further down south, Lisa Wake is another one. She's from the north of England. So Google those people, but they are amazing. They could come in and do training days. They can train you to be a coach, but it's amazing.
Well, tell them I want to podcast her. If she's your coach.
Yes, absolutely.
I would love to podcast her.
She would love to.
I want to talk about another change, because you've been doing this a quarter of a century.
I know.
27 years. I've only done it 3 years, but I'm just old enough to be your son. But a lot of the dentists out there are worried about corporate. When you started, there wasn't corporate dentistry, was there?
No.
Okay, so now what percent of the market do you think is corporate? What are your thoughts on corporate?
So now it's
I guess specifically, do you think the individual dentist should be scared? I mean, are these guys gonna be Godzilla? And
I don't think individual dentists should be scared. I think the corporate dental practices are they are driven through their model, and that's what they do. But as far as the corporate businesses are, they're snapping up multiple dental practices, and they're basically just they're going out, they're providing services, they're providing care, but they're not at the heart of the patient. So they will put together processes, they're driving these businesses forward, but I think independent dentists have got nothing to worry about, because remember, people are attracted to people. So your patients will be attracted to you if you are the right dentist for them. And I don't think dentists have to worry about corporate at all. Yeah, absolutely not. I think corporate dentists, I know that a lot of, I'm working with a practice actually that have been taken over by a corporate, and they're still running things as they are. They're still growing their business. They're still employing me to go in and help them grow their business. And it's, I think it depends. There's a few different corporates. There's corporates where they've got hundreds of them. Like there's a lot of NHS and what I call basic dentistry corporates. And really, they're big companies. They're snapping up the practices. what they're actually doing is they're driving down the salary of the dentist. That's what they're doing. They're driving down the salaries of the dentist. So those dentists should be worried. But dentists who own their own practice, I don't think they've got anything to worry about at all.
What's funny about the United States is the dentists are always worried about corporate.
Yeah.
And a lot of those corporate dental chains, their average dentist doesn't stay with them for 1 year.
Yeah.
And yet they fear that. I'd rather fear, like, who is that lady you work for, Holly?
Dr. Elaine Halley. Yeah.
I mean, I would fear practicing across the street from her. Not some corporate chain that has a different dentist every year.
Exactly, because
and in my neck of the woods, when they come in from the corporate, every one of them has the same $5,000 treatment plan.
Yeah.
And there's no trust involved.
There's no trust.
Some kid that just walked out of school told them to replace all their fillings and crowns, and it's $5,000, and they walk in here and they go, "Do I have to do all this?"
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah. And
So why do you think dentists fear the corporates?
I think they maybe fear that, I don't know why. I mean, I suppose they fear them maybe as an insecurity, but I think if they know who they are and they know what they provide, they've got nothing to fear. So my advice to any dentist out there would be, know who you are, know what you're about, know what your patients, who your patients are that you're serving, and you've got nothing to fear. You know, because it's a person dealing with a person. It's a human. A corporate are up there with statistics and figures and what have you, which obviously are important for any business. You need statistics, you need things to monitor, but it's not all about statistics. A patient is not a statistic. A patient is a person, and it's about having that human touch.
And in your 27 years experience, what % of the dentists that you met are actually human? What do you think? 10%? 15%?
100%.
100% are humans?
No, I'm only kidding.
Because see, in the United States,
these percent questions, I'm not a numbers girl, right? Okay. I think there's a lot. Unfortunately, there's a lot of. There's a difference between a skilled dentist and a skilled person. You know, being able to have good personal relationships, and I think that's the difference. So. I couldn't put a figure, but I think there's a lot. I think every dentist goes into dentistry because they care. They go into dentistry because they want to help. That's typically why they're choosing that as a career when they leave school. That's why they're going to university, because they want to help. And then it's a case, the ones that will really, really survive are the ones that can communicate well, because communication is the bottom line of everything. And it's the ones that can communicate that are the human.
And you know what? And you know what's crazy? We'll put a course up on Dental Town. It'll be like finding the lost canal, or removing a wisdom tooth, and they'll get 10,000 views. Yeah. And then we'll put up the greatest practice management, people's skill of what really matters the most. 300. Yeah. It's like they're.
It's a bit like the iceberg theory, though, isn't it? It's like they don't see that as a perceived need. So the perceived needs up there. So a little proportion of them will think communication is really important, but the actual need is under there, and they don't see it because it's buried. You know.
Well, in the United States, everyone, most of the dentists are basically the ones who just didn't have enough personality to become an accountant.
Oh dear, dentist and accountant.
They applied to accounting school. They said, "Sorry, dude, you got to be a dentist. You're not warm and fuzzy enough to be an accountant."
Oh dear. That's a sad state of
affairs. So then my question is this: I think one of the biggest problems of dentists is that we only got in dental school because we got A's in trig and geometry and calculus and physics, and every time we got an A in physics, everybody would say, "You're so smart," and everyone else couldn't even pass it, and everybody just kept telling us we were so smart and so smart, and we got all these A's in physics and science and the Krebs cycle, and then they walk out of school and none of that even matters. We never use. I've been a dentist 29 years. I've never used trig or calculus or the Krebs cycle and all this stuff. But they're always been told they're so smart, and they were always at the top of the class. I mean, at my dental school, like 5,000 people applied for 120 seats, and so that makes them think I'm the smartest guy on the block. So who the hell are you to tell me anything? When everyone's told me I'm the smartest kid on the block my whole life. And so now I'm in there looking under Dr. Gal's microscope, and I'm what is that global? Who's that made by that microscope?
I'm not sure. Actually,
The one downstairs, a global. So you're looking through your global microscope, and you're looking at your root canal, and it's just perfect.
Yeah.
But the patient doesn't know if it's good or bad.
Yeah.
I mean, so how can you convince a dentist that everything they learn in school doesn't matter, and everything they're focusing on the patient doesn't even realize, and that they got to turn around and start focusing on the people, the soft stuff, how do you get them?
So how I would convince a dentist, I think I can't convince somebody that's just not interested. They'd have to have some spark of interest in wanting to have better patient experiences for them to even know who I am. But what I would say is, being the best your patients don't know a good endodontist from a rubbish endodontist. They'll know if they're in pain or not. They don't know a really good hygienist from a not so good hygienist. They don't know the difference. What they do know is they know who cares for them. They know what the dentist or hygienist or nurse makes them feel, and that would be my so essentially people are human, and humans have emotions, and people generally in dentistry, there's an emotional reason why people want dental treatment. Sometimes they're either moving away from something or they're going towards something, but there's an emotional reason for that. And if you're the greatest technical dentist there, but you can't get, it's a bit like, I always teach my dentists to basically, everything that you're going to say clinically, just drop it. Imagine you're speaking to a 5-year-old. That's how you don't speak to your patients like a 5-year-old, but the language, imagine that you're speaking to a 5-year-old, and that's how, and it's very difficult so sometimes you can almost have paralysis from too much information. It's so difficult to bring yourself to a lower level when you speak in such technical terms. But a really great story that I have is, there's a doctor up in Nine Wells Hospital in Dundee, Rod Mountain his name is, and he has been working with my friend who trained me to be a service designer, Ali McGill, and he's been working in our hospitals. And what they do is every month or 2 months, all the academics would get together and they would go over all the papers and they would go over all the studies, and they would have these learning months and what have you. So they then got to work with service designers. So the service designer asked them the question, so what does that then do to the patient? And none of them could answer what their meeting on all their educational studies could do to the patient. So then they thought, well, how could you? So if it's to benefit the patient and it's not benefiting the patient, how could you benefit the patient? So what they then did, they began to structure their meetings, and they began to structure their meetings where they invited all the reception team in. They invited patients in who had actually used the service, and they have monthly or 2 monthly, I don't know the exact time scale, but they have these meetings, and they've learned so much, and their outcome is that they have learned so much on how to be better, so much to deliver a better service, just because they've came down from technical academic world, and they've came right down to the level of the patient that they're serving, and the changes have been phenomenal. And from that, they've actually designing the services to work around, and that's in an NHS hospital. So where there's not a business there, there's a bigger team, there's bigger dynamics. But in a private practice where typically everybody's generally quite charged on giving a patient great care. So my advice, my persuasion would be to really look at how successful you are with your patients and analyse it, because being the best doesn't make your business the best.
Well, that was a phenomenal hour, Flora, or Flo. I love your energy. I love your karma. And thank you for all that you've done for dentistry for 27 years. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That's lovely. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it was an honor.